my mother.
A Russian folktale. It was harvest season and some villagers were busy cutting and gathering wheat. Marfa and Ivan were also busy in their field. Every day they would come to the field early along with their children. There they stayed till sundown. Varya was their youngest girl, who was 6 years old. Her legs were so short that she had to run and skip to keep up with her parents.
Vairashka, you are a little slowpoke,
Her father said as he swung her onto his broad shoulders. Varya knew she had to stay at least 20 or 30 paces away from her father as he worked and swished his newly sharpened scythe. Swish, swish, swish went the scythe as Ivan cut down the wheat. Marfa followed him, gathering the wheat into sheaves or bundles just big enough to bind. Varya, eager to be helpful, held each bundle as her mother tied it. When 3 sheaves were tied, her mother stacked them in a little pyramid. Sometimes Varya would not follow her mother. Especially on very hot days, she would stop to rest on the warm ground. Later she would run to her mother and bury her face in her mother's cool arms. The villagers worked tirelessly. Their muscles ached, but they were happy because the harvest was rich and there would be bread for everyone. Finally, it was the last day of the harvest. The wheat had all been cut, stacked into bundles, and ready to be taken away in wagons to the threshing barns. Varya had been with her parents for some time. But the day had been a very hot one. She wandered into a row of wheat that was not yet cut down. It was cool and pleasant, and the sun did not beat down so fiercely here. Soon she was sleepy and curled up and went to sleep. When Varya woke up, she jumped to her feet. Her mother was nowhere in sight.
Mama! Mama! Momoshka!
Varya called loudly, but there was no answer.
Maybe if I run along the row, I will catch up with her,
she said to herself. She ran to the end of the row, but there was no sight of her mother. She then ran the other way, but there was no trace of her mother. It was almost dark when Varya stumbled into a clearing where men and women had paused to gossip after the hard day's work. Her parents were not among them. The little girl stared at them, not knowing what to do. One of the men saw her and in a booming voice that he thought was friendly, said,
Look what we have here.
Everyone turned to look at her. This made Varya burst into tears. Poor little thing, cried one of the women, putting her arms around Varya. She is lost. All this only made Varya cry more, and she longed for her mother. Little girl, what is your name? What is your father's name? What is your mother's name? Finally, Varya sobbed out.
My mother is the most beautiful woman in the world.
All the men and women clapped their hands. The tallest man, called Kolya, with a booming voice, said,
Now we have something to go on. Bring Katya, Manya, Nadia, and don't forget the beauty, Lisa.
As each beautiful woman came running, Kolya told them all to stand back, while Varya told them which one was her mother. Varya looked at each one and sobbed hard in disappointment. Soon every beauty from the village had come, but not one of them was Varya's mother. Just then, a breathless, excited woman came puffing up to the crowd. Her face was big and broad, her body even larger. Her eyes were pale, and her nose was a great lump. Her mouth was almost toothless. "Varyachka!" cried this woman.
Momoshka!
Cried the little girl, and they fell into each other's arms. Varya looked up with joy at the men and women.
This is my mother. I told you she was the most beautiful woman in the world.
The group of men and women smiled at each other. Kolya repeated the proverb they all knew so well and which the little Varya had just proved.
We do not love people because they are beautiful, but people are beautiful because we love them.